Thank you for everyone for being here. Marketing distribution is not always like the most sexy topic of filmmaking. So the fact that you're here, we really appreciate it. And I know you're going to learn a lot from this panel today. So thank you also to our panelists. I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then we'll dive in. Okay, so I'm just going to go down from my right here. We have Sylvia Desrochers. She's currently EVP Film and Entertainment at MPRM Communications. During her 2-decade career, she has worked with lauded filmmakers for their theatrical and awards campaigns. Sylvia's represented films at Cannes, Toronto, Sundance, South by Southwest, Hot Docs, Tribeca, and Slamdance, which she now represents. She regularly collaborates with studios such as A24, Magnolia, Focus Features, Greenwich, Amazon Prime, Netflix, Vertical, and Bleecker Street. Is that all? Is that all you do? Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for being here, Sylvia. All right. Next, we have my good friend Liesl Creque Williams. Liesl is the head of filmmaker relations and concierge services at Gathr, a direct-to-audience technology company that provides tools to filmmakers, rights holders, and distributors to generate revenue and drive audience growth. And Liesl is also a former Sundance Fellow and producer of Miss Juneteenth. Thank you, Liesl. Monika Sharma is the co-founder and creative director at Product of Culture, a groundbreaking woman of color-founded agency and media platform that amplifies underrepresented voices. Product of Culture merges content, commerce, creatives, and culture through various channels, including brand marketing, experiential events, media amplification, and multi-digital strategy. Through their work, the agency has redefined film marketing distribution strategies, executing award-winning campaigns that spotlight diverse narratives. Thank you, Monika, for being here. Next up, we have Imani Davis. Woo, okay. Imani is a film programmer at the American Cinematheque in Los Angeles and a producer and writer as well. The American Cinematheque is a 501c3 nonprofit boasting over 1,500 screenings a year. And she curates, plans, executes unique and engaging film events. Upon arrival to Los Angeles and starting her role with the AC, Imani is now the founder and lead programmer of the American Cinematheque's newest short film festival called Proof, which is one of the... Yes, Proof, let's go. It's one of the first ever festivals completely dedicated to proof of concept shorts. Imani, thank you so much for being here. All right. Next up, we have Chris Lane, who currently serves as President of Distribution and Audience at Joint Venture, a new distribution company that is filmmaker forward and centered on community building through distribution strategy, audience engagement, and innovative campaigns for independent films. Most recently, as VP of Distribution at Participant, Chris worked on a worldwide distribution strategies for social impact-driven companies' narratives, documentary, and episodic slate. Chris, we're so happy to have you here. Thank you. And last but not least, the incredible Laura Kim is with us. Laura, as EVP Marketing at the recently shuttered Participant, she contributed on the company's behalf to campaigns for Academy Award-winning American Factory, A Fantastic Woman, Spotlight, and Citizen4, as well as All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, Descendant, Flee, and The Look of Silence. I could go on and on. She currently works for Mubi, where she is working on titles such as The Substance and The Girl with a Needle. So again, we are so lucky to have all of you here. Thank you. One little bit of housekeeping I'm being reminded of. Slamdance filmmakers, don't forget to pick up your gift bags at the box office. All right, you're welcome. Okay, so let me dive in. One thing that we have at FDC in our Zooms is a dashboard that has a tab for best practices. And I don't want to say just because something's how we've always done it, we should keep doing it, and we need to be innovative and try new things. But what have you all seen in your various expertise recently that you want to share that you've like, oh, this filmmaker did this, or we did this on this campaign that was really successful, or maybe it wasn't, and you're like, hey, don't put your resources there. Are there any tips and tricks or best practices that you want to share with our audience, which is primarily filmmakers? Anyone want to dive in? We can also go down the row. Sylvia, do you want to start?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
With something more basic. Hi, Monika. Thank you so much for having me. We work with a lot of filmmakers, and a lot of what our agency does is the marketing and PR piece for films, and we've worked on incredible films like To Kill a Tiger, we've worked on short films, the whole gambit. And a lot of things that we've seen lately are just that filmmakers don't really think about marketing or distribution until their film is complete. And so something that we've been working with some of our filmmakers is trying to start thinking about how you're going to market your film and who your audiences are while you're building out your film, and finding ways to engage with those audiences throughout the production of your film. So a great example of that is we've worked with some films that are catered to a South Asian audience. And so something they've been doing is working with small South Asian businesses to incorporate their brands into the film, whether that's in BTS moments, it's hair and makeup, or it's the drinks that people are using on set, or it's it's different fashion labels that they're incorporating into its artwork. And so then all of those different small businesses and those brands become marketing machines for your film once it's released. So that's something that we've been seeing work really well.
I also want to just double click on that. I, around the holidays, received a Product of Culture email that had a gift guide to women-owned, people of color companies with great gift ideas. And another thing I thought that was brilliant. I'm like, I'm going to copy that. And then another thing that you guys do so brilliantly is when we worked on To Kill a Tiger together, as we know, like filling a theater, getting butts in seats, so to speak, is so hard, right? For a documentary, especially. And I don't know, Monika has this like bat light that she puts into the sky, and it just calls all the people to the theaters. I still don't know how she does it, but it's really incredible. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of that your community that you've built?
Yeah, so we started off as a community platform before ever being an agency, and the reason why we morphed into an agency is because we felt that there weren't enough multicultural marketing agencies that really were speaking to their audiences. And so a huge part of building that community was figuring out like what are the types of things that they want and they need or that they're looking for. And that's why I think it is so important to think about who your audiences could be for your film. And so with a film like To Kill a Tiger, if you haven't seen it, it's an incredible documentary. And so one of the things we had done was we worked with Annalisa to self-distribute the film. It was initially just going to play on a Canadian broadcast system. The film was kind of essentially shelved. And I think for the filmmaker, she was like, I want more for my film. It had played in incredible festivals. It had won amazing awards. And so she was kind of like, this can't be the end of the journey for my film. And I think so many filmmakers deal with that. And so a lot of the distributors she was talking to were kind of like, cool, we'll put your film on our platform and that's it. Because a lot of the distribution platforms are also not going to do the work to market your film. It has to be something that you're kind of doing on your own, especially in the world of independent film and documentary. And so when the project was brought to us, we worked with Annalisa. She was able to put it in to a lot of theaters, but we still need to get people to come see the movie, right? And so with that film, we worked with not only South Asian audiences, but we reached out to different nonprofits who we felt their values aligned with the values of the film. And with a lot of those organizations, they're always looking for ways to eventize things for their members, right? Like what are activations that we can do that bring people in the community together to discuss certain topics. And so we went to each city and we were like, how many of these different gender-based violence groups can we find? And we sent out hundreds of emails, and essentially we were able to pack majority of the screenings. Then we were able to show that these screenings were packed and then re-pitch it to a distributor to show them that, hey, we know that you thought no one's going to watch this film. Here are all the different cities we screened in. Here are how many people came out. Here's the audience sentiment, the reviews, the press. What do you think now? And we were able to get distribution right before the Oscar voting window closed. So I think a lot of distributors like to see that you already have a built-in audience, and something that we've seen with some of the streamers is, if you have it theatrical, it will do better when it's on a streamer. And so if you can do that work, they're that much more likely to care about your project.
Absolutely. Who's next? Some tips, tricks, examples? Neil, yeah.
If I can, I just wanted to really double click on what you're saying. At Gathr, we do a lot of direct to audience engagement, and so what specifically direct to audience solutions for filmmakers. So there are four things that four products we have: theatrical, non-theatrical, video on transactional video on demand, and live event cinema. And so essentially what that does is it creates events for filmmakers to gather their audience. And so this is not meant to be a pitch on Gathr, but what the point is, the best practice is that we spend a lot of time. I talk to filmmakers as head of filmmaker relations literally 3 or 4 times a day, different films. And the big thing I always try to instill in filmmakers is just to your point, how are you engaging with the audience right now? Because we will get you in the theaters, we can get you non-theatrical screenings, but what's the plan from inception of how we're going to take that screening in a university and leverage that into people who will continue to host screenings or who will join your mailing list? And what are those questions now? And before, we like to start working with films almost 90 days before their first event, so that in those 90 days, not only are they putting their film on the platform, but they're exploring and they're mining and they're harvesting. So it's always this conversation about build your audience, how are you building your audience? And I'm constantly challenging filmmakers as a best practice, okay, great, I've heard about your film, this is what we can do, and tell me what you're doing now with your mailing list. And it's always it's a positive, I think, experience, but it's kind of a wake-up call of oh, we haven't done anything yet, or maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. I'm let's do that now while we're coming up with our strategy to find the partners who can be ready when we do put you in theaters or do have a non-theatrical screening.
Absolutely. Speaking of theaters, I don't know, Imani, do you want to jump in on American Cinematheque and all the things that you do? I will say, I shared this with Imani right before we came on stage, but when I get the American Cinematheque emails, I'm immediately have to RSVP or it's going to sell out. So incredible community that you guys have built over there.
Thank you. Amazing. I'm glad to be here. Just a disclaimer too. I'm one of there's a bunch of programmers. I'm not doing all 1,500 screenings. But yeah, there's just been such a demand, especially coming out of COVID, for in-person, communal theater moments. And people want to see films and they want to see it on the big screen. They want to go to these eventized events. What we've seen I'm going to center in on the new indie films in particular, is those maybe limited runs that are happening with Q&As, with introductions, maybe accompanied by a curated screening of sorts. Those moments they're able to create through this campaign, theatrical campaign, is a lot more impactful, I would say, than the traditional 7-day run, which isn't really a thing anymore. With some films, it's still working, but I think every film is different, and especially thinking about an indie film, where maybe you have an attachment, you have some people attached that have their own audiences as well. You can get them out, everyone's posting, and maybe there's a performance that is special with your film, and you can do that during these screenings. But we mostly do limited engagements, which are just 2 or 3 screenings, and we really try and pack those, who's the talent that we can have for those. And focusing on those, and then we can add more shows maybe. But we really want to focus on eventizing those. And something too is okay, where maybe the nearby bars that are by the theater, maybe there's a little after party that you can advertise on the screening page too. If you just have $500 for a tab and you're say the movie name, you can get a free drink on us, and it runs out when it runs out. So that's fun too.
I love that. Oh my God, sign me up. Chris, yeah, I see you. Do you want to jump in, Chris, with some tips and tricks?
Sure. Hi. I think too, as you are putting together your budgets for your production, I think also it's important, just because of the state of the world of distribution and the markets and whatnot, always good to just reserve some money for potential P&A in case you have to distribute this film yourself. That's really key, and that can be done through a variety of ways, but also, potentially even there might be some, if your film is issue-driven, or maybe it's not, maybe it's like centered around certain communities that, there might be some angel donors that can help you with that P&A. I recently consulted on a film called The Right to Read, which is a documentary about how reading is taught in schools is really kind of actually inequitable for Black and brown students. And that's not all the methods of the way that reading is taught, but in one particular way called the Lucy Calkins method. And it's adversely affecting literacy rates around the country. It's produced by LeVar Burton. It's directed by Jenny McKenzie. And Jenny assembled a very small team together to run an impact campaign because really no one was willing to pick up the film and distribute it. So she found an angel donor that was very interested in this specific issue about literacy rates with Black and brown kids, and gave finishing funds, but also budget for P&A, essentially to run an impact campaign, which we turned into a distribution strategy. And that strategy involved 1,800 screenings around the country. They were not in theaters, they were in community centers, they were in schools, they were with PTAs, they were with various other sort of parent organizations, they were with school boards. 1,800 screenings around the country. It lasted for about a year or so. And eventually I said, there's been some amazing audience building. People are within the community are aware of this film. It's time to take this direct to consumer. And we basically built a direct to consumer strategy, got it up on all of the VOD platforms, iTunes, Google, Amazon, et cetera. Also got it up on Canopy to make sure that, if you have a library card, you can watch this film for free, which really helped the impact message. We received, at a certain point, this was like this past summer, probably at around 300,000 views. And then once it was on iTunes, was in the top 10 on Docs for 5 or 6 weeks. So, finding those funds or, raising those funds in case you have to do this yourself is also quite important. And there's ways to do that. There's resources out there to help you do this on your own, which, there's, if you go online and you can find the distribution playbook. Is the website like thedistributionplaybook.com? I think so. It might be just that. Or if you just Google the distribution playbook. And it's a great little modular resource that can guide you through the entire process. If you've got questions like, I don't know what distribution is. What's a sales agent? What's that? It explains it all. It's pretty modular. It also goes into marketing. It goes into PR. It goes into all of the different items. And it's created by Seed and Spark and Kinema. I highly recommend it.
Incredible. I definitely want to get Laura and Sylvia's tip. But I also wanted, because I believe you guys partnered on the Errol Morris documentary Separated. And so maybe you could also talk about that too. Laura, do you want to take it off?
Sure. I think we've touched upon a lot of the issues that Separated faced. We had a broadcaster in MSNBC, a documentary about families intentionally separated that were coming into Mexico. It's about the Trump administration's policies to intentionally be cruel. And Errol had made this film about it, super timely, but really without a theatrical distribution prospect. And so I think, like the work that Annalisa and Chris and others are able to do, or Neil too, they put together a really quick little team and pulled together a theatrical release simultaneously as they were doing an awards campaign and doing their launch for the broadcast all at the same time, all happening within a matter of, 2 months, maybe? 3 weeks. Yeah, okay, 3 weeks, but really, really.
I came on the day after we released in New York, so.
Yeah, very, very rough. And I will say that when you have someone like Jacob Soboroff or Errol Morris, you think there is a built-in audience. You think that you're going to automatically get theatrical distribution, but we're just not in those times anymore.
And the festivals, right? It played.
Yeah,
Telluride,
Venice and Telluride, yeah. But that's not really what I wanted to just talk for a minute about audiences and how, yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about audiences and how filmmakers and we all think that a film is universal, but the universe is not coming to your movie. So you really, really need to think about, and this is during the course of production, just take notes and just keep a notepad in your phone of what is the kind of person that is going to see this movie, that is the most prone to see this movie, that is going to be the lowest hanging fruit. And in addition to that, who is this movie going to play the best towards? Because there is good word of mouth, there's incredible word of mouth, and there's terrible word of mouth. And you really want to be building audiences seeing your movie before its launch or during its launch that is going to generate the best word of mouth. Because as you all know, I go to movies because people I love, trust, and respect say, oh my God, you have to see this movie. Very little motivates me otherwise. I read the reviews, I watch the trailers, all of that, but when I hear from someone I respect and know my taste is aligned with, that's what motivates me. So you're trying to find that sweet spot of audience that is going to love your movie, and that's not the universe.
Yes, and so I did work with Laura on Separated, and I will say that film, as compared to a lot of the films I worked on, had an enormous budget and was in a completely different stratosphere because I had Errol Morris and Jacob Soboroff. Like, I work on a lot of films where we do not have that. So that was actually a very big film for us to have all that, even though it was minuscule in other terms. But the way I wanted to wrap a lot of this up was to say, I guess Rosanna, whose film opened the festival, said earlier that I told her, which is true, I was going to come in and say this, is that I tell filmmakers this all the time, you did not make a film, you opened a small business. And that's how you need to think of it. Because I'm the one that's often on a film at a festival and then in release, and I see the disappointment. I know I understand it. I live it with all my filmmakers of going in with big dreams and thinking, I'm going to find my knight in shining armor who's going to acquire my film and answer all my prayers. And not only is that happening less frequently, but I've been saying this for over 10 years now. So even when the market was gangbusters, I've been telling people this. It's just now finally people seem like they want to listen, is that even if you have somebody acquiring your film, it doesn't mean they're going to do everything you wanted on it. It doesn't mean every dream's going to come true. You're going to hate them at one point. That also always happens. So you should also think of, like, what do you want to do with this small business? And actually, John Reese talks about this a lot in his Substack, if you read it, and he's a friend, and I think he's done a good job of reiterating this over and over again, is like, what does success mean for you on this film? And success on Separated was very different than what it looks like for one of my filmmakers who comes in and is like, I am self-funding this top to bottom, and I want this so I can make my next film. You know, it's like, Errol's going to make another film. That's not his goal. You know, so it's just, you have to think about what it means for you, and that's why I say it's a small business. Like, what are you trying to do with this business? And you're going to open the doors, and you have to keep those doors open, and it's going to require some funds. It's going to require you to put in some sweat capital. So if you were not thinking that way, or you can't, I'm married to an artist who can't think that way, so I understand it, and I also empathize. You need to find someone in your life who can, and that may be your producer, that may be someone you bring on to be a partner with this, but like, if you were, let's say you were good at pottery, and you opened a shop to sell your pottery, but you didn't know anything about business or how to sell pottery, you just made really good pots, are you gonna sell any pottery? Probably not. So think about your film the same way. Maybe you made the best film in the world, but if you don't know how to sell that film and get it out there, and it's basically what everyone here just said, just lots of different cool things you can do to do that, which I know right now you're thinking, that's very overwhelming. Which of those options should I do? What you need to do is go think of it as a business. Not all of these things is relevant to your film, and there may be other things that weren't said today that are relevant to your film. And it's putting together that right combination that's right for your film and for your goals as a film team. That's what you're trying to find. That's your version of success. That's my stump speech. Okay.
But we're not letting you go anywhere because there's going to be more. That was so good. That was so good. Like, mic drop and like you're out. We did, just real quick, a couple folks mentioned, like Chris mentioned the distribution playbook that Christy and Emily created. So they just mentioned John Reese's Substack. Are there are. What are some of the other resources? They could be Substack articles, widgets, skidgets. What are some tools that that you use or you recommend using, or even following like someone on Substack, something like that?
In the doc space, if you're in the doc space, which is where I work a lot, you should be following all the newsletters there. That's how our community, I basically think, is communicating with each other at this point. And so there's like, Doc NYC sends a few every week. And I actually am always reading those because they always find good articles that they'll find something that I hadn't found yet. They just had an article that they referenced about something about the NEA and the new way grants are being done for documentaries in 2026, and I had missed that. So if you're in the doc world, you should be definitely on the Doc NYC newsletters. There's 2 a week, and they're both excellent.
I would also say, and this might seem basic, but just the weekend recap from the trades of the box office. If you just get used to reading those on a regular basis to understand what's happening in the marketplace, how our audiences interacting with films in theaters. The specialty reports out are really great. They're pretty comprehensive. It's really, I think, like when you get into a regular habit of that, you can be really informed as a filmmaker to talk to distributors and also to like raise questions like, have we thought about this? I'm connected to this audience. What can we do with this? Because I saw this in this trade article about X distributor doing this. Can we do something there?
I'm gonna kind of second on that, just like using the resources that you have. Maybe also just looking up films that you feel like are similar to yours and looking at the writers that wrote about it and the trades that covered it, or if there were like smaller media outlets that covered it. A lot of times those writers are looking for stories that are similar, or they've already kind of have an audience that's built in. So I think find those comparables and use them to your advantage.
There's one I'm blanking on, Annalisa, I may need your help, but specifically talks a lot about like YouTube and new media, creator economy type of, it's a Substack.
Ted Gouge.
There's Ted,
Honest Broker?
I think The Honest Broker, maybe.
So what's the name
I think
is?
that's the one, maybe.
Yeah, I love that one.
But yeah, that, there's a couple, John Reese, obviously, Ted Hope, like there are a bunch of, that just really kind of are thinking a lot about how to make those authentically authored films, which everyone here is making, and how to get those out into the world. So, and there are many others I may be forgetting too.
Brian Newman has a great newsletter.
Exactly.
I'll plug
yes,
that.
Definitely.
Shout out to TikTok. I think there's like interesting stuff on there. If you're like looking for marketing ideas in particular and you're like trying to brainstorm things, I think it's really important to get kind of interdisciplinary in ideating on different ideas too, because like I'll be honest, a lot of film marketing is kind of dusty. It's just like old, just feels old and like older or like more traditional of like, oh, like a little plug and play, like you're gonna print out this amount of posters, we're gonna put up these like social ads, and it's just like feels a little inauthentic. So getting like personal and like driving down into like what is the essence of our film and of our brand, like what is fashion doing, what is the beauty market doing, like there's some innovative marketing things happening that I think can be applied to the film industry. And so there's some really cool TikTok creators that work in marketing and are just like getting on TikTok and talking about like marketing trends that they're seeing. Like there's someone that does like kind of an ad of the week, and she just like points out like interesting ads that are happening either on the street, like or happening like print or advertising and stuff like that. So when you're ideating for different things where you're like, I haven't seen this in film marketing before, it could work for like my film, TikTok.
I love that.
Can I?
I'm going to say one more thing on that too, is also utilizing TikTok creators and influencers. I think a lot of times we see filmmakers are so concentrated on trades, and trades are amazing, but if you're doing it theatrical, if you want people to actually talk about your film, kind of like what Laura was saying, I mean, if a TikTok creator is talking about your film or they post a clip, I mean, that the impressions that you will get from that sometimes are a lot more meaningful than what you might get in a trade. A lot of times, even if you're looking at who's associated with your film and expecting like a really big name, right? Like we've worked on films that are produced by Mindy Kaling and Priyanka Chopra and Dev Patel. Dev Patel is not selling tickets. Like, no one is saying, like, oh, yeah, okay, like, he's a producer on this film. He talked about it once. He's also not even on social media. Like, nobody even knows. And so, trying to find that person that maybe has, like, 10,000 followers, but, they talk about film in, like, a niche way. Like, a lot of times those creators, those niche creators, those micro communities, they convert way more than you could ever imagine.
Yeah, don't be afraid to get local. Like, that's A-okay to be local. I think also I would say that, like, while, like, the world is on fire and, like, and, like, while the state of this industry, there's so many reports like, oh, things are difficult. Like, now is the time for innovation. And I think the more that we can all think outside of the box, the better this business will be. So I think it's important. And you all, as filmmakers, are all on the front lines. And so this starts with you, and we can be the kind of carriers of that and kind of help your film sing and find new and innovative ways, but it's a team effort, and we have to collaborate and work together to kind of really think outside of the box. And, we're releasing movies, we're having fun. Like, there is a way to kind of think about things in a new and different way and have a great time at doing it too.
I'm looking at Laura for a second about the substance, because I talk about Buzzy. Do you want to share any of a peek behind the curtain on this? Because did you work on the substance? Yeah.
I feel like I feel really lucky that I got to work on a movie that was an underdog in the awards universe, that was dropped by a major studio that had to find a new way and found a really exciting new distributor to bring it out into the U.S. It has stars in it. It is genre. It is gorgeous and gory and crazy. But I think those things actually make it commercial. So I don't feel like this is the challenge that you may all have. I think that this movie had distribution as movie stars. It went to Cannes. It's in a different sort of stratosphere than even most of the things I normally work on. But I'm thrilled that the genre is being seriously considered in this conversation. I would say something, though, about awards and people really thinking about awards before they've even, had their release. Or, so I would just not even engage in that conversation. It's I think, get your movie open, get your audience, get your reviews, and then think about it. I think people throw away a lot of money for no good reason.
That's a good point. Okay, so another thing I'd love for us to talk about is, again, to get people to go to theaters, it feels like there has to be a sense of urgency. Like, you have to manufacture urgency. I remember the days when we'd open a film at the Landmark on Pico, RIP, and I'm thinking of Ted Mundorf, who was on a panel earlier today, and it would play for like 18 weeks. And it would the grosses would go up week over week, and that's where I knew the great word of mouth was happening, because instead of the grosses going down every week like you would expect, they were actually increasing. But now if you don't open, you're out immediately. There's no time to let that word of mouth build. So can you guys speak about building that urgency, maybe eventizing these screenings? Imani, I know you talked a little bit about that too, but maybe other tips and tricks of eventizing to get people to get to the theater immediately.
Yeah, something else that I was going to bring up with the Q&As and stuff like that is, I'm trying to make sure I'm centering around indie films too, and not something that feels unattainable, but seeing great success in the kind of stunting of moderators, whether it's your celebrity friend that can do a funny moderation, or even just going local, as we were saying, who's some local folks, they don't have to have 1 million followers, but maybe they have 30K or something, and they're a local comedian, and they want to come out, usually hey, can you go up don't harass comedians at their shows, but if you're cool with them, you're having a good conversation, you're I think my movie would jive with you. Would you watch it? Maybe we can have you out or something. Could be fun. Or someone else that has kind of a tie to your film. Something that was funny with The Substance, so that indie spirit after party. There's like a drag show, substance theme. Like that's so fun. We've had drag queens like do stuff before at our screenings, so there are just ways to like stunt moderators too, and that makes things urgent. Where it's like, oh, one night only. Like this is an event that they have to go to. It's like kind of themed and stuff. Where you don't have to. You're like being strategic about not spending a lot of money, but that's something too.
One thing I'm seeing with filmmaker relations at Gathr is we have this like no risk theatrical on demand model, which is kind of like Kickstarter, but you can basically like reserve an AMC Cinemark, and you just want to sell like or reserve 70 tickets or however many to actually have the event go forward. What's so great about that is we do what's called like a people's premiere before sometimes even the actual distribution booking that someone has. So what you can end up doing is saying like all those organizations and individuals who like were advocates for your film, who were the audiences you coordinated before, can have these like private screenings the week before your actual release. So now you have all these people who actually saw it, they're generating revenue, and like you're getting emails from all those people. And what's so cool is at those screenings you may find one or two other people who want to host another screening after the premiere or after the, so after the actual booking. So like it goes back to this idea of direct to audience and creating that event of like Imani saying, like a one-time, one-night thing. And you can charge more. You can do like VIP tickets you can do so many exciting things. And you can, and I think that we've seen that work in the past and like decade ago, and now I think it's a season to continue doing that and do it again.
I think it's really important to really think of those things as the way of the future and really viable options, because most people who are really hardwired to want a one-week theatrical run because that's the way it's always done, most distributors fight for that one-week theatrical run, but in truth, most movies are empty and can barely fill 2 showtimes. So you've basically asked a theater to be empty all week, and you could have filled 1 or 2 showtimes. Not good for you, not for the livelihood of the theater, not good for the distributor. It's, I think, really trying to concentrate on the event type or the evenings is good.
I think with that too, there's a really fun film. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's called You, Me, and Her, and they released on Valentine's Day weekend. And they did some really, the way they marketed that film, I thought it was just so smart. They had done it's about a threesome, and they had done like a buy 2 tickets, get 1 free, bring your third. But the other thing that they had done that I just think was really smart, and kind of going back to this thing about like brands and small businesses, is they had reached out to a ton of brands that they felt like the product worked with their film, and they had said, hey, we have this movie, can you gift us product for these gift boxes that are going to go to influencers in all of the markets that they're screening. And they were able to get all that product for free, and they only took on the cost of shipping, which I think they had gotten a grant for. They had marketing money reserved for it, and they sent it to these local influencers who all just posted about this fun gift box that they got with I think there might have been some inappropriate things in there. I don't know. It's a movie about a threesome. But that created buzz, to your point, of like, okay, what is this movie? It's Valentine's Day weekend. It's only coming out, this weekend. I have to go see it. So think local, think about creative ways, think about comedians, artists, brands. Like, what are those other, communities that overlap with your films, and how can you utilize them to create urgency around your film?
Well, and because they want to get their message out about their brand and their organization. So it's like a win-win situation. So, your film is a platform for other things, too. Think about it and how it's connected to a larger kind of ecosphere of audience engagement opportunities.
And to that point, and just thinking about distribution earlier on in the process, I think there's a lot of brands that are also realizing that some of the influencer marketing is getting tired, and they are looking towards film. There's brands like L'Oreal and Adobe that have entire departments now that are dedicated to films that they might want to become producers on. So when you're looking at building out your film and your production, reach out to brands and see if there's an alignment that makes sense, because a lot of these bigger brands like Adobe and L'Oreal, they have insane marketing teams, and doing the most basic digital marketing campaigns, they can just do them in their sleep. For you, it's make it or break it, but for them, it's we can even provide that to you in kind, right? So I think looking at what are those other angles that you can get creative on.
And just going back to what Laura was saying originally, you do have to think outside the week-long run box. And some good news to share is for a long time, as your publicist, I would have said, I love that idea of doing one-night screenings around the country, but the press won't cover it. And fortunately, that shift I started to see last year. We did a film called King Cole, a documentary that played in 70 theaters across the country, but they were mostly all one-night screenings. And we were on NPR National. We got a ton of great national hits for that film because we were able to go say, like, look, there is a lot of openings here. Yes, they're one night, but these are real cities or real places where the film is opening, and it worked, you know. So I think that's the good thing, is that some of our media that have tended to think very old-fashioned in the past are starting to accept these kind of new ways of releasing films. I think the pandemic actually helped us a lot with that, of their kind of opening up themselves to say, like, NPR was kind of like, as long as enough of our listeners can hear this and go see the film and engage in it, then okay, we'll do it. You know, so I think that's just, we all have to start thinking differently about what's best for each of these films, and it's not going to be the same every time.
And if I can say, just double clicking on what you said, I like that. I like it. We were releasing Vanessa Hope's film Invisible Nation with Ted Hope and Vanessa, and it was similar, where they decided to do some theatrical on-demand screenings in November, which built up enough buzz that they were able to then do a limited global release on TVOD of Invisible Nation. It was covered by Financial Times, The Guardian, and it was like a 3 or 4 day thing on the platform. But it was amazing that coordinated with press and publicists and everything else, that was able to be a thing. And we're seeing it obviously with Union too. It's also on the platform, like NPR, New York Times drove, and their work they're doing, the great work the Union team's just doing, was actually able to earn more money in like a 3-day Thanksgiving drop on TVOD than the whole theatrical, you know? So it's...
Was that where it was the free for workers?
They had that too? In addition, but it was also like earning and free for workers.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. I have a couple more questions, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience. We're going to go to, because we started a little late, we're going to go for another 15 minutes. I want to make sure you can ask your questions to these subject matter experts. And then instead of doing the breakout, we're just going to open it up. And if anyone in the audience wants to share something, I will bring Albert and Barbara back up here. And then if you guys want to share anything that you're working on, that you found success in, or, hey guys, do not do this, this was terrible. We want to kind of have like a town hall and really make sure everyone here who wants to speak can share. Okay, so just going back to audience development and audience engagement for a second. Chris,
Yes.
I just read your title out.
Yeah.
What was your title?
President of Distribution and Audience.
And audience. That's the first time I've ever seen that before.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of what that means?
Yeah, sure. So the company that I'm working at, the distribution company, is 4 months old, joint venture, and we are an artist-forward and audience-centered distribution company. And what that means is, at the heart of what we do is grassroots outreach and audience engagement, and understanding where we can find pockets of success and the champions of the film, and building a distribution strategy from there, and being nimble enough to understand how audiences are reacting and either shift our strategy as we go and not treat it like we're going to go out on X number of theaters and this is our plan and we're sticking to it. We're going to be iterative and responsive, and work with filmmakers too, because you all will, have that early audience set of insights, and build a strategy together, and ensure that we find and allow audiences to find your film.
I love that. I think something we always hear a lot from Hollywood is there's we don't know who your audience is. It's not based on IP. You don't have big stars. Blah blah blah. And that's really, they're saying we don't think there's an audience for your film. It's not, we can't see it. It's not Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson starring in it, so we don't know what to do. And so that's where, if we can build this audience, if you can build this audience for your film, not just for this one film, but over the lifetime of you as a filmmaker, because I'm sure you want to make more than one. That I think is so key. And again, making it authentic and organic, but really intentional of that communication with your audience.
Well, and just to say that for us, as a distribution company, it's kind of freeing because we don't have to say like, oh, these are our type of films. Like our type of films relate back to audience. Say, is there an identifiable audience that we can grow over a distribution strategy? That means that we're genre agnostic. We can do narratives, we can do documentaries, we can do horror, we can do, spiritual films. There's lots of different ways that we can do this. We don't have to tie ourselves to one specific type of genre that some distributors do. So it is like, for us, it's a freeing moment. And ultimately, audience is essentially a new way of saying marketing, but we're actually kind of rolling up our sleeves and doing that audience work.
I love it. Yes, clap. All right, so I'm going to rapid fire, just go down the line here. Last question, then we'll open it up. Okay, so if your film is premiering at Slamdance this weekend, what advice would you give to the filmmaker? Not your film, I mean, yeah.
Advice for someone whose film is opening. Use this time to build your community. That's the best advice I can give. This is your community. The people you meet at festivals are going to become your colleagues. They're going to become your partners. So that's regardless of whatever category you're in.
I would say, just to echo what everyone else has been saying, build your audience now. And if you're talking to sales agents, make sure you try to keep as many rights as you can. Try to carve out rights to do your own non-exclusive things later, because I think that the way the industry's kind of shifting is there are going to be a lot more windows available, and a lot of times distributors want to take everything. So just be mindful of what rights you're possibly giving away.
I'm going to say this because I don't think anybody else on the panel will say this, but leverage the experience in whatever way you can for your portfolio on social media. If you are a filmmaker and you have a film, you should create an account for it. If you don't have an account for it, does your production company have an account? If this is not the first film that you're going to do and you're going to continue to do more, your social media accounts are where you're building that platform of everywhere your film has been and everything that it has done. And if you have not done that already, do it now. And if the first couple photos are you of your Slamdance premiere, that's a great place to start. So just don't lose that opportunity to be vocal on social media, which I know is very annoying and most filmmakers don't like to do it, which is why I'm telling you to do it.
Along that line of social media, document your journey. And it doesn't have to be like a whole thing, like, oh, I need 2 cameras and we're setting it, like it doesn't. You can take like little 5-second video clips of just like the vibe, and then you've got yourself like a reel. And it might go viral because you're like living my filmmaker dream. Like, people want to see like what you're working on and see the process. There are so many people online who like also just want to know more about the film industry. So it's helpful for them too. But that's a great way to like kind of build the audience on Reels and TikToks. And then, a hot take, stop with the postcards. If you want to, amazing. But like I think it can be expensive, and I think there's just like more impactful things that you can do to kind of get the word out about your film without creating waste. Save the planet.
I would say OMG, congrats on the Slamdance premiere. What's next? What's the next festival? What's the next moment for your film? Just because you're in Slamdance and it's premiere does not mean that the journey's over. So really kind of think about what your festival strategy is, and also kind of how you're going to get this film in front of decision makers, in front of distributors, in front of sales agents. What's your plan? What's next?
I would agree with everything everybody says. This starting a community, asking people after they see the film if they loved it to follow or like, so that you can let them know when it's going to come to theaters and they can help support when that time comes. But I would say see your colleagues' films. Go see each other's movies. Make friends with them. I think you'll probably end up working more because of them than people you meet as industry members. I think your colleagues and the people you bond with and go through this experience with are going to be your community, and I think a lot of you will hire each other.
I love that. Okay, did you guys all write that down? That was like gold. Okay. Any questions? Yes, for our panelists. Yep. We have someone with a microphone. Up front first, yeah.
Hello. Thank you all for your amazing wisdom and advice. I'm so glad you mentioned You, Me, and Her, because I just think Selena Ringel's team is doing an amazing job, like getting the word out and doing all the collabs, and it's just so exciting to see what she's doing. I'm a filmmaker. My name's Natalie Kamlu. We are screening 7:30 tomorrow at the DGA. And I'm wondering, so I'm a short filmmaker as of now, and I just is there ever going to be a world where we show a short film before a feature in a theater? And how do I make that happen? I would love that to be a new thing. We've been doing it here. I think it's great. How do those conversations look like with theater? You were saying earlier, you don't go to a theater directly. You figure out a distribution contact to go. Yeah, I'm just wondering, how would that work?
Anything is possible. I think everybody on this panel would probably say the same thing. When we worked with Annalisa to self-distribute To Kill a Tiger, we've done that with a couple other films, and especially if you're doing individual screenings or you're doing singular event-type screening, anything, literally anything is possible. If you watched a film tomorrow and you're like, wow, this film really would work well or pair well with my short film, I would just go up to that filmmaker and say, hey, where are you screening? Can we do something together?
Totally.
Go ahead.
Yeah. That is really helpful to just have the package before you go to the theater, just because yes, we'll have some shorts come to us and it's we want to play for a feature, and it's just tricky, especially with a new film or something. So it's just better if that relationship is already there. Then we can everyone's in, great, we can just play it.
Totally. I think it's also the type of theater, the circuits, that space in front of the feature starting, that trailer kind of package. The studios pay a lot of money for that. So, but maybe your local art house theater is going to be more flexible and wanting to support local artists. I did have a friend who had a short film that she thought would pair really well with Inside Out. And she got theaters to do it. So she just reached out to the theaters and yeah, sure, we'll do that. So again, anything's possible. And another question?
Mine was, hi, and thank you. Mine was just to kind of piggyback off of hers, actually, but can you guys just speak to, if there are any differences, or because I think a lot of people, they make a short so that they can garner interest to do a feature film. And so do you guys have any advice of, how you would go about, or if there are differences in marketing a short film versus a feature?
I would say you should talk to Imani and submit to the Proof Film Festival. Can you talk a little bit about Proof?
Yeah. Oh, if you want to elongate the short into a feature, yes, you should submit to Proof, which is Proof of Concept Festival, specifically for that. And I think it's a lot of filmmakers that we've had through Proof. This is our third year now. We see it at kind of the end of their festival journey, and that honestly helps because they are building up that momentum as they go from festival to festival, and then it's kind of Proof is this transition into okay, let's talk about the feature version. I would say definitely have doesn't have to be the script that's ready. It can be an outline treatment, something that you can talk about. Be ready to talk about it. Have pitch materials, because if you're talking to someone, they're yeah, I'm interested. It's okay, great. We'll send you the script in 2 months. And it's you're kind of losing momentum. So be ready to build on that momentum and have kind of materials ready for the feature.
And even if you're not trying to make a feature out of your short, there are some cool distribution platforms that exist. I don't know if anyone here is submitted to Umletto, but Umletto will essentially house your film for at least, I think it's 3 months, and then it'll continue to house it for as long as they want to keep it, or if you want them to take it off. So there are kind of cool, unique distribution platforms for shorts where people can discover your film. But I think it's the same thing, with a feature, right? If you're not telling people about your short, or if you're not doing that marketing push, it existing on Umletto is only, it just being there or being housed there. But there are cool things like that where at least it lives somewhere. It's called Umletto. It's OMLETTO.
A big round of applause. Laura Kim had to leave, but okay, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
Hello. My name is Domantas. I have a short documentary in here, and since it's my first festival to be accepted in, first festival experience, I'm learning about a lot of things, how festivals operate, what premieres are and what festivals want. And then you meet people who perhaps would put your film on a platform to be screened, but then you learn that other festivals won't take if it is put up. So then do you wait until you do your festival rounds? Can you make deals with festivals where both festivals want a premiere, at least a European premiere, and you got into both? How do you solve that? Is it possible to jump through all the hoops, or do you just have to make sacrifices and carry on?
Yeah, I was going to say earlier that, don't just put your film up on YouTube right away, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's going to completely X you out from other opportunities. So, yeah, I mean, I would be, it's your art, it's your, IP, and so really kind of protect that and kind of come up with that strategy. By all means, yes, you will have to negotiate with festivals about what type of premiere. You can you can slice it and dice it and say this is the Southwestern premiere, or the Southeastern premiere, or the Utah premiere, et cetera. Like, there's different ways that you can kind of angle it, and you can negotiate between those festivals on what type of premiere that is.
Let me see. Thank you.
One more question? Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vladimir, and I'm an actor, but I also am interested into movies, but more like making them and stuff. So I just want to ask a question, because I've been thinking about this idea for a long time, but I don't know what would American audience would think about that. So personally, I speak 12 different languages fluently, and just understanding that they're talking about James Bond, this franchise and all of that. And I just have a question, maybe in future or something like that, would it be interested for American audience to make new James Bond one day, or someone similar to him, but more like an intelligent James Bond, where he's understanding different cultures and speaking different languages and all of that?
I think we found our James Bond. You're saying you volunteer as tribute to be the next James Bond? That's what I'm hearing.
That is the idea, because I saw a backstage post when I was 18 years old, and it was written I was I want to be an actor. I was just saying that story. I was watching Rocky Balboa, and the stuff where he says, you ain't gonna believe this, but you used to fit right here. I'll hold you up and say to your mother, this kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. And when I saw that, and especially Leo's movie, when he says, these little black boxes, they're called telephones, they're not gonna dial themselves, and all of that. So I just started picturing, an idea of becoming an actor in the U.S. And now the more I'm I've done a lot of different projects in Boston, New York, and now I just moved 3 months ago to Los Angeles.
Well, I think you're the right place. You're here at a festival. You're at Slamdance, which is an incredible festival. You're meeting people. You're building community. I think you're doing all the right things. I don't think any of us work with actors here, but I think just meet people. Right?
But would you guys say maybe some idea about that idea that I want to go in? Would you like to say something, Miss? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say.
I was just...
I mean, you guys all have experience and you guys been doing this, but you guys were talking about innovation, and I think if you can just start. أنا أتكلم اللغة العربية، أنا تعلمت اللغات جميلة جدا وهو شجون وهو دون شجون وهو كايشين. Alors je parle français, c'est une langue très jolie. Lorsque je parle français, je me sens très heureux.
Very impressive. We get it. No, that's awesome. Yeah.
I think you can do anything that you want, any kind of spin on anything, as long as the execution's there. So, yeah.
Okay, I want to give one more huge round of applause for our panelists. Thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate it.